Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Connected Health Summit. We're very happy to have you here back with us again for our August session. And if it is your first time attending this year, welcome. Our Connected Health series of events is focused on health and health technologies, looking at new innovations in consumer care, and keeping patients and consumers engaged. The theme of today's discussion is Health at Home, Modern Lifestyles, where we are going to be discussing the evolving market of at-home consumer health and wellness solutions. If you haven't met me before, I'm Kristen Hannick, Research Director here at Parks Associates. I lead our coverage of digital health generally, as well as other areas, including broadband and multifamily. I spend my time speaking with different folks across the industry, designing and leading our syndicated and custom research engagements, and speaking at events like this one. Before we get started, I would like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for making this event possible today. Thank you so much, Alarm.com, Becklar, Calix, and FTP Software. Your support is very much appreciated. In terms of the agenda for today's discussion, I'm going to be kicking things off with a presentation of some of Parks Associates' consumer survey data, looking at health at home market trends. This presentation will be followed by a talk from our keynote visionary speaker, Jason Oberfest, a Vice President of Healthcare at ŌURA, makers of the ŌURA ring, and moderated by Parks Associates' own Elizabeth Parks. Finally, at 11:45 Central Time, we will be holding our panel discussion, where we're going to be taking a closer look at market developments and the business models and strategies required to thrive in today's digital health market. Joining me for this discussion are Dan Josebachvili, founder and CEO of Silvertree, Abby Katz, Lifecycle Marketing Manager of Eat Sleep, Antoine Robiliard, VP of Health Solutions at Withings, and Farman Syed, VP of Product at Tonal. So yes, I'm going to be talking about 3 different trends when it comes to health at home. The first relates to the evolution of the smart home market. In particular, the evolutions we're seeing taking place as companies expand from focusing on a smaller group of core enthusiasts to chasing the wider market. The second is about the growing opportunity we're seeing in smart home for wellness solutions, especially as it relates to clean air, clean water, and also solutions aimed at caregiving. The third relates to the changing market of fitness and lifestyle solutions, where we are seeing wearables, much like the smartphone did when it first emerged, take on more and more functions and essentially gear up to replace certain product lines. We're going to be touching on all of these in time. So, smart home. As of the end of 2023, 45% of US internet households reported owning and using at least one of our tested smart home devices, which I should mention here does not include smart speakers, as we consider those to be more entertainment products, much like smart TVs. The smart home product category, including device types such as smart thermostats, smart door locks, water leak detectors, security cameras, and many others, is approaching majority adoption. But many of the individual device types that compose this category are still somewhat niche. The transition from a product going from niche or early market to the mainstream is what we call crossing the chasm. It includes evolving product strategies and marketing, as well as the solutions themselves, to appeal to a broader market base of consumers who, instead of the newest and greatest, want complete solutions that create convenience in their lives. In the past 5 years, we have seen smart home move across this chasm, with adopters shifting from what we call early innovators and early adopters into more of the early majority. This early majority and late majority makes up most of the population. They are the mainstream and an enormous buyer segment. So, the market for smart home is increasingly in the middle of this table. The early majority, who can relate to new technology but are slower to embrace it. Practical pragmatists, who instead of imagining their own use cases and how they can change or adapt existing solutions to fit them, want something that is already created and ready for them and suitable for their needs. In terms of their price sensitivity, they're looking for something that provides a return on their investment in line with what the solution does for them. In order for them to buy or come on board, they need proof or some kind of evidence that the solution is worth the cost and does what it is supposed to do. Something else that makes this segment of the market interesting is services. We've seen, over the past several years, an increasing pivot away from one-time hardware sales to subscriptions. These provide more sustainable revenue flows, removing some of the risks associated with product launches. However, in order for the early majority to come on board, as I mentioned before, that sense of value has to be there. People have to get something they want for their money, something that is worth it to them. Enter services. Consumers have overwhelmingly adopted home services subscriptions. Entertainment, retail memberships, productivity, office software and fitness, and professional security monitoring lead the pack today in terms of consumer adoption. However, there is also unmet demand for other services as well, including those that make use of in-home smart devices. Caregiving, including caring for elderly loved ones, caring for children, and so on, is one of the areas where there is an absolute ton of demand, but adoption remains low. Looking specifically at the use of smart home devices for caregiving, some 77%, over 3 out of 4 US internet households are interested in tested functions, such as alerts if a loved one falls in their home, or safety alerts in general. But only 7%, less than 1 in 10, currently use their devices for these use cases. This is an area that is ripe for service disruption. Clean air and clean water are 2 more places where we see quite a lot of potential. When asked about interest in an HVAC monitoring service, over half of our survey respondents, heads of US internet households, reported that they were interested, rating their interest a 5 to 7 on a 7-point scale. The service that we tested had different components, as laid out here. But when we asked about which components respondents were most interested in, what was a must-have versus a nice-to-have versus something that they didn't want, respondents were most interested in inspections from technicians, quality air filters, and air quality monitoring, ensuring that the air in their home is safe for their households and that their HVAC is running properly. Interest in water monitoring, as I mentioned, is also high, with nearly 40% of heads of US internet households reporting that they are interested in our tested service, with the features laid out on the right. The most in-demand features among this group are water leak detection, automatic shutoff in the case of a leak, and also water quality monitoring, providing alerts in the case of issues with the home's water quality. When we look to the connected health devices market, there are really 3 major product categories today. Wearables, including smartwatches, fitness trackers, sports watches, make up the majority of what people own and use. Smartwatches in particular are owned and used by roughly 1/3 of US internet households. When we look outside of the wearables category, the next most adopted device as of 2024 are smart weight scales, and then connected exercise equipment, including indoor bikes, treadmills, and home gyms, much like Tonals. 5 years ago, this looked a lot different. Adoption was half of what it is today. Much like smart home, smart health is similarly trying to cross the chasm. And also, much like smart home, smart health is taking these services and subscriptions route. 1/3 of wearables owners have an attached subscription for their wearable today. These subscriptions are led by cellular plans and cellular connectivity, allowing consumers to get practical benefits everywhere they go. However, fitness and lifestyle subscriptions, premium health insights, and health coaching services are in demand and growing in their adoption. Similarly to smart home, there are areas that are underrepresented with quite a bit of demand. One of these is safety and security, where interest is also very high. If you were here for our last event, you may have heard me share that safety and security solutions are increasingly popular, especially among members of Generation Z. 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds report using a device or app that automatically calls for help in the event of an emergency, versus just 13% of those aged 65 and older. The key drivers we found for people to adopt safety devices and apps, listed in order, are general peace of mind, safety when exercising outdoors, for example, running, hiking, or cycling, monitoring an elderly loved one, monitoring a child's location and safety, monitoring a wearer with a health condition, dangerous situations such as walking alone, or being a lone worker on a night shift. So yes, in summation, we are seeing an evolving market for smart home and smart health, with device makers increasingly moving to cross the chasm and expand into the mainstream. Services is a key component of the strategy, expanding on the value of devices and bringing home these use cases to early majority consumers who expect more of the work to be done for them. Within the home space, or the space where we see more traditional smart home companies playing, we see high demand for solutions that offer caregiving support, including care for seniors, for children, for pets, and also adult household members. We also see keen interest in air and water solutions. Within the more traditional smart health space, wearables are eating the market in a way similar to what smartphones did over a decade ago, picking up more and more functions and associated services to create and fill new use cases. We see in particular smart rings and also hybrid watches emerging to serve new niches, screenless devices suitable for wear in many different types of situations. However, wearables are not necessarily capable of everything, just given the limitations of their form factors. Smart weight scales, connected exercise equipment offer unique avenues for further services delivery as the connected health device market continues to evolve. Thank you everyone so very much for joining me for this presentation. We will be back in just a minute or so for our keynote with Jason Oberfest, VP of Healthcare at ŌURA.
Welcome back. I'm Elizabeth Parks, the President and CMO of Parks Associates, and excited to welcome you to our Connected Health Summit. We have got Jason Oberfest, the Vice President of Healthcare of ŌURA, a pioneer in the connected health space, and excited to welcome today to our Connected Health Summit series. ŌURA has redefined how we understand personal health and wellness through its innovative smart ring technology, providing deep insights into all sorts of activities around health and wellness. ŌURA is a leader in the field of wearables, and we're excited to hear about how this device has evolved over time since it was introduced in 2013. We're going to talk about use cases, the evolution of the product, consumer engagement, new partnerships, and the expanded role that data plays now with this device. We will be bringing Jason in just a second, but before introducing him, let's watch a quick video from ŌURA.
Say hello to ŌURA Ring, your new favorite wearable. More accurate from the finger than the wrist. Track your heart rate, day and night. Wake up to in-depth sleep analysis. Balance your activity and recovery. Push yourself or take it easy. Accurately predict your period. Sense your blood oxygen levels. Water resistant up to 100 meters and battery lasts for days. Take control of your health. With deeply personal data and insights, with the world-class ŌURA membership.
Wow, that was so cool. It was awesome to see that quick video just to understand a little bit more about the ring. Jason, we're so excited to welcome you here. So let's see if we can bring you in. And if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself and your role and a little bit more about ŌURA.
It's great to be with you, Elizabeth. Thanks for having us. I'm Jason Oberfest. I lead healthcare strategy and partnerships for ŌURA. Have been working in the wearable technology space for quite some time now, and Long story short, wore ŌURA for quite a long time, really came to appreciate very deeply the effect it had on me as an individual and the potential for the platform in enterprise healthcare. And that's what led me to ŌURA and what I'm working on today.
Okay, great. Well, there is so much for us to talk about, but I really want to start off and just understanding a little bit more detail about the ring and about some of the new features, functionality, and some of the latest use cases. So let's see if we can start there, and maybe you can give us a little bit of the history of the device and what it started out as and what it is evolving to become.
I'd be happy to. ŌURA was founded in 2013, so actually quite a while ago for a wearable technology company. You probably got some sense of this from the video, but ŌURA continuously monitors over 20 biometric signals from the body to give really a full picture of daily health. The product was originally designed with a big emphasis on sleep because sleep is just such an important foundation for so many aspects of good health, but it has since expanded into monitoring many other key areas beyond sleep, including heart rate and activity tracking, body temperature tracking, stress monitoring, and more.
And so in the very beginning with this device, like you said, it really was focused on sleep. When did you all start, advancing the capabilities to track more than just sleep?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a moment too just to talk about the choice to focus on sleep first. I really want to give credit to the original team at ŌURA for having the foresight to do that. Sleep is critical, of course, not only for good mental health. We all know what a poor night of sleep can do to your outlook for the day. But I think in the years since the company's founding, it's been increasingly understood by physicians how important sleep is, not only for cardiovascular health in places like that, but also metabolic health, even in areas like women's health. It's played a really important role. And, over time, we've expanded features in precisely those areas on the foundation of very accurate sleep tracking.
And so that ends up meaning that you're collecting all sorts of little pieces of data for these very long extended periods of time when hopefully everybody is sleeping well. Can you explain a little bit more about this data set and really the value that comes with it that may be different than maybe data when somebody is awake or really moving around actively during the day?
Yeah, I mean, for the benefit of the end user, we're really trying to help them assess initially on the principles of their sleep and their quality of sleep, as well as balancing activity throughout the day, and a concept of readiness as well. And readiness is a factor of the first two areas, but includes additional information as well. So you may have had a great night of sleep, and you may have had just enough activity for the day, not too much or too little. But if you have a couple glasses of wine before bed or a large meal close to bedtime, your readiness could be significantly impacted by that. So we're really trying to help people have signals to understand some of these things and make really good decisions long term. And it turns out, of course, that information can be very valuable for care teams as well. And we see that as a tremendous opportunity going forward.
Can you talk a little bit more about the form factor and the fact that you all have introduced a ring, to keep track of all these metrics versus maybe some of the other wearables that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most distinguishing characteristics of ŌURA is the utilization of a ring design. We have found that while an increasing number of people want to track their health data to better understand their health, we also see a growing trend towards many people not necessarily wanting another screen in their lives, to be honest. Something strapped to their wrist, inundating them with perhaps stressful news headlines and work messages throughout the day. The ŌURA ring is really designed to essentially disappear into the background when worn, while still providing this kind of comprehensive health tracking and everything that's needed to really be a personal health companion.
And with that tracking, of course, comes the ability to shift that information to the end user. Can you explain a little bit more about the app and the app experience that comes along with it if you're an ŌURA user?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think when thinking about any kind of patient engagement technology like what we're discussing, it's really important to think about the app experience of the device. That's just such a key part of what drives behavior change, outcome change, consumer engagement. I'll just start by saying, I think overall, and I'll generalize here, but I think many leaders in wearable technology have been primarily focused on the presentation of raw data values from the sensors as the core part of the experience. Like, I'll just give an example. You may see that you got 45 minutes of deep sleep last night and an hour and 15 minutes of REM sleep. And that data may be accurate and validated, but is that good? Is that bad? What could I do to improve that? How do I put that in context? I think that's often the important missing piece. And I'd say one of the most noteworthy things I think about ŌURA and the experience for people who use ŌURA is really that it's not just about the presentation of data, but that data is always presented in context and delivered with really supportive and contextual messaging. And that's what allows people to really make better, more confident decisions every day about steps to improve their health. It's really a unique aspect of the experience, and I think it's a really important part of what we're doing and what we're focused on. The only other quick thing I'd mention on form factor, just before we move too far from that, I mean, there are some other really unique benefits of form factor on the Ring that I think are worth calling out. I'll just give you a few examples. It's much more comfortable for a lot of people to sleep with a Ring. And so we end up seeing much higher quality longitudinal data as a result. Charge times are much longer than you might see on a typical wearable as a result of that form factor and not having a screen. So people are way less often in that situation of trying to fit a charge in before before bed and wearing a device all day. And it turns out, and this is important to mention, that sampling biometric data from blood flow on the finger is actually a much more accurate place to do it in a lot of cases for a lot of different measures. So for all those reasons, beyond just the benefit of a simpler experience, we found the form factor to be very effective.
Well, and with all these wearables, it really is upon the device maker to create the engagement, but in a way where the consumer maybe doesn't even realize it, right? Because it's not a chore. It's not something that they have to do. It's just happening. And then they get these details of information in a way that is, delightful in the sense of wanting them to continue that use. And we know, with wearables that's when, like you said, even just the charging can become an obstacle for keeping people up, continually using them. And so interesting points there on that power and that charging capability. Data gives lots of opportunities for integrating and working with other companies that could be leveraging those insights on behalf of that end user or for other reasons. And so I want to talk a little bit here about some of the partnerships and the things that your team is working on, particularly as it relates back to healthcare providers and, really working to get consumers in tune with their health and wellness and being proactive members of their own health. And then how are you all utilizing the Ring and different partnerships to really help drive that engagement and interest in personalized health?
Yeah, it's a good question. One trend we've definitely seen is ŌURA increasingly being utilized by care providers. I'll give one example here where an influential precision medicine physician based in New York, her name's Dr. Florence Kamite, has used ŌURA as part of her care protocol for a number of years. In one example, and you can read about this, we actually worked on a case study summarizing this. Dr. Kamite was able to identify what she determined to be a severe and potentially life-threatening case of sleep apnea in one of her patients in part from ŌURA data. This is a really interesting area. As an example, sleep apnea. We think it's a really important condition to help people address for a number of reasons. You probably are aware it affects roughly 30 million people in the US alone. It's estimated that roughly 80% of that population do not know they have sleep apnea. And if you're not familiar with it, with sleep apnea, you can be sleeping adequate amounts each night, maybe 7 to 9 hours, and yet you still can wake up feeling terrible each day. And that condition is also linked to many other serious conditions like cardiovascular disease and metabolic health issues. So it's an issue that causes people short-term pain and discomfort, but is also linked to poor long-term health outcomes. So the ability to help an individual or a care team that's supporting them identify the possibility of something like that and then develop a treatment protocol for it is, I think, really exciting and important for us to pursue.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the caregiver, caretaker role, and that ends up, really thinking about the seniors 65 and up. There's a lot of different cohorts of people, segments of consumers who are looking at their health and wellness in different ways. And with wearables, it's really interesting, especially historically, the PERS device, the personal emergency response device, has not really been welcomed by seniors. In fact, it's been seen as something they really don't want, almost embarrassing, and like an old person wears that. So a lot of resistance to that kind of device, although we're seeing new form factors there as well. So can you share a little bit more about the senior demographics? And then I'd also like to ask about some of the younger demographics as well.
Yeah, I'll talk generally about sort of patterns of use across all these, and we can talk about each of those areas. That's a good question. In general, we've seen a big trend in consumers having an increased interest in not only increasing their lifespan, living longer, but also improving what many refer to as health span, the idea of increasing not only length of life, but the quality of life as well. These consumers are reading authors like Peter Attia and others like that, if you're familiar with them. They're listening to podcasters like Andrew Huberman. They're taking more control of their own health. And as part of this interest, they want to track their information through devices like ŌURA or other wearables. And they increasingly want to discuss this data with their care providers. And so with that general trend in mind, I'd say that ŌURA really is designed for anyone who wants to be in touch with their own personal health and well-being. And that, of course, can be a wide-ranging group of people. That can be older folks who often don't sleep as well and are thinking more about that. That can be for busy new parents who are looking to manage a new sleep schedule. It can be for professional athletes. And we've seen some great examples of that this summer with the Euros. You may have followed some of that news around ŌURA, the football tournament in Europe, or just an everyday enthusiast who's looking to train for their first marathon. All of those segments are relevant. I will say, to your question on the over 65 population, that's been quite interesting to me. That's an area that I looked into closely as I prepared for some commercial programs. And it was really interesting for me to realize that over 65 users of ŌURA are on average as engaged as, and in some cases even more engaged than, our under 65 population. They're typically averaging between 2 and 3 sessions per day in the ŌURA app, checking their information. And, we're seeing 85% of that population engaged in the app at least 5 times a week. So some really interesting patterns of engagement there that I was frankly somewhat surprised to see.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how people respond once they start getting information. And I think consumers now expect a lot of data and information at their fingertips. No pun intended, because of the technology that has advanced and then creates that availability, especially through the app experience. I wanted to ask one point on let's say the voice of the app and how that engagement is occurring with that end user. And I know in our previous call, we talked about a compassionate voice and just the way the interaction is between the software and the device and that end user, and really trying to end up helping people move through an understanding of what's going on with the data. Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, we talked about the issue of sort of often too much of a focus, I think, on just raw data and the presentation of raw data. I think the other thing that I've come to realize, having really spent so much time building out products in these areas, is I think a lot of the experiences tend to naturally become very black or white. You're either doing well or you're not. You're either in the green or you're in the red. And the reality is humans are complex individuals. And I think the messaging that you'll find, I mean, I'd be curious what all of you think who have used ŌURA, or if you start using it, if you find this to be the case, but it recognizes that nuance in a way that is still quite helpful and still extremely supportive. And I just honestly, I just don't see that myself as an individual, even in a lot of the other technologies that I've worn and tested over the years.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I do not have one of these rings yet, but it's now
we have
on
to
my
change
list.
that.
It's now on my list of things to get. What can you share the price point on that for our audience, just so people understand the cost associated with the ring?
Yeah, I mean, so we have two primary styles of rings currently on the market. Functionally, they are the same. They're just manufactured differently, and they're aesthetically a little bit different. Price points vary primarily by finish. So some finishes are more expensive to produce, as you might imagine, than others. We see prices between $300 and $400 and then above, depending on the finish that's of interest on the device.
Okay. Before we go on to talk a little bit more about the business models and the direct-to-consumer model that you all have introduced, I do have an audience question. It is about the availability of other rings. And so here is the question for you. There are many Chinese rings at $25 available now. What is the difference with that ring versus what you all are offering, and how would you necessarily compete with something at such a lower price point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many parts to answering that. Aside from the obvious ones, like the quality of the manufacturing and the quality of the materials, I think one thing that's really important to know is, ŌURA, it's interesting. ŌURA has been known as a innovative consumer technology company for a long time, but what a lot of people don't realize is the deep culture of science and validation that's been present at the company from its founding. We have over 20 PhDs at our company. They are very heavily focused on validating the accuracy of the information. We've done extensive studies to compare the accuracy of our measurements to gold standard measurement tools, whether that's polysomnography for sleep or ECG devices for heart rate related monitoring. And, we have a bunch of features that we haven't even launched yet, primarily because we don't have the level of validity and accuracy certified internally that we would like to make sure when we put something in the market that we're certain it's at our standard of accuracy. And that's a very different proposition than pushing, technology out at low cost. And I think something that will really serve us well in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the word trust comes in here. You've got a device that people are relying on for their health and wellness, and that trust factor and understanding who's making the product and the value behind the quality, of course, I think is of critical importance in this whole market. Any connected device, really, whether it's a health device or any other smart home device in the home, there's vulnerabilities there that are getting opened up, and consumers should be thinking about, where is this made? And how, who else could get access to the information? I mean, there's a lot there that with security and privacy that could be issues.
Yeah, it's a great point you raise, and I appreciate you raising that. I mean, that is another really important part of this. The amount of investment we've made in data protection and security, for all the reasons you described, it is, we think, a really critical part of the company, and always will be. And that's not trivial to do. We have a large team that thinks about that every day.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much you've invested in that area, because it is so important. Let's change the direction here and talk a little bit about the launch, the direct-to-consumer business at retail, and now with all of this available data and really a demand for data, whether it's healthcare providers or the consumer, the end user looking to access data to understand it. How is data and the availability of the data, the granularity even of the data, and the quality of the data driving the business forward, especially as you all look to add new features and applications to the ring?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, as you said, we started as a direct-to-consumer company, and we've become a beloved product to millions of users, with that focus. At the same time, we are thinking a lot about how can we build on what we've created to really help the efficiency of care, to help people achieve their health goals in connection with their care teams. And that's a really important part of what we're focused on going forward. I mentioned earlier an example of the use of ŌURA in primary care. That's clearly, one really interesting area. I think there is a broader model emerging for the use of ŌURA and other wearable devices like it in even more scaled enterprise healthcare programs. Another part of our business we haven't talked about, but I'll quickly mention, is the use of ŌURA by clinical research teams, and that includes smaller academic research teams at world-leading prestigious institutions doing some of the most interesting research you could imagine, involving ŌURA to measure the effects of programs that they're working on, all the way through to commercial driven research, whether that's supporting new drug development or new medical device development. ŌURA is a really preferred tool for research for really a lot of the reasons that we discussed: the accuracy of the information, the standard work that we've done to verify the accuracy of the information, the charge time, the median wear times. We see between 23 and 24 hours of median wear time a day. That leads to really high quality longitudinal data that research teams really appreciate. So that's sort of another part of the enterprise work that we've been focused on. And I think beyond that, we do see a broader model emerging for the use of ŌURA and other wearable devices like it, in areas like, imagine being paired with different treatment protocols to support patients on their journey. So I'll give you a few examples of that. I think there's some really interesting areas. We talked about sleep apnea as one area. Another area I would mention would be an area like metabolic health, and with that, the associated use of GLP-1s. GLP-1s are incredibly effective therapies. They've been all over the news. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them. They work extremely well, but for many different reasons, a lot of people can't stay on those drugs forever. They're really expensive. They can, in some cases, have side effects as well. And so for a lot of different reasons, people may be involved in a program with GLP-1s, but over time need to come off that. And imagine a scenario where a tool like ŌURA can be used to support patients during those care protocols to cement healthier habits during treatment, but then also to sustain those habits longer term. It's very well known with GLP-1s, if and when people do come off those treatments, typically you might see two-thirds or so of the weight gain put back on. And along with that, the associated adverse effects in terms of cardiovascular health and metabolic health. So ŌURA can really help sustain better outcomes long-term through those programs. Same is also true, by the way, of other areas like sleep apnea. I mentioned that earlier as an example, but for all the reasons sleep apnea is important to treat. And the reality is that, it's very hard to motivate people often to stay with treatment, because treatment for sleep apnea is not ideal in a lot of cases. CPAP machines are not ideal to wear. But if you can wake up each morning and see in your sleep score in ŌURA how effective that device is at driving sustain improvement, you're going to be much more motivated to follow through on the treatment. And so we're seeing that pattern in a lot of areas, whether it's a metabolic health program or a sleep apnea program, even in areas like women's health. We haven't talked much about women's health, but that's been a really important area of focus for ŌURA for a long time. We believe it's been a very underserved part of healthcare for a long time. And if you think about something even like a fertility treatment, there's a lot of increased awareness of the potential benefit of good sleep in driving desired outcomes around fertility treatments. And imagine ŌURA as a paired device during those cycles of treatment. If there's even small chances of improving the outcomes on what is a very expensive treatment protocol that usually requires multiple treatment cycles, that's a huge win for the patient and for whoever's funding that treatment. So we're seeing a lot of that kind of patterns. ŌURA can be used to help people realize they might have a health issue. And then it's used during a treatment protocol to help drive better outcomes and to sustain those outcomes long term.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the idea of this companion device that goes along with, maybe practically anything as you all, unfold these use cases and determine, especially on behavior changes and just getting people to understand what's going on. Of course, every body is an individual and responds differently to drugs and treatments and all sorts of things. And so it is a case-by-case basis on how things are going for people. I've got a few questions here. We don't have but 2 minutes left, so I'm going to do a quick lightning round and see if we can get through a couple questions here for you. So from the audience, what are the developments in ring-based fall detection, which I think are essential but also difficult to detect in hand movement?
It's a great question. I think it's a really interesting and important area to consider for sure, especially for all the use cases that we've talked about, home monitoring in an aging population. I don't have anything specific to say with regard to what we're doing there, but I will say I think it's a really interesting and important area.
Okay, and we see that, and we study that in a lot of our work across a lot of the different areas that we cover in the home with devices. And so we'll be watching, the future with you all in that regard. What about, can you share quickly in 30 seconds a little bit about your new AI coach within the app?
Yeah, I think it's a really natural extension of the core experience and what's unique about the core experience of ŌURA, which we described earlier, which is really being kind of supportive and natural in terms of how we interact with our populations. And this is just taking advantage of this incredible technology that's continuing to evolve, giving people an easy way to be proactive in how they receive advice and guidance from ŌURA. We're super excited about it.
Okay, great. And the last question, how are you charging for your data services?
On the consumer side or on the enterprise side?
It doesn't say, so however you'd like to answer, consumer, enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are good opportunities. On the consumer side, I will just quickly say, we have, in addition to how we structure selling rings, we have a broader membership component to ŌURA, which delivers a lot of additional value on top of the hardware itself. And there's a small charge monthly for that. So that's on the consumer side. On the industry side, we structure programs the way you might see, typical disease management programs being structured. And that can take a variety of forms. The biggest area, I think, of opportunity for ŌURA and wearables generally in this space is value-based care, for sure. Because value-based care-driven organizations have the right long-term financial incentives to focus on improving patient outcomes long-term. So you can imagine how ŌURA ties into a lot of the really interesting work that's happening in healthcare around value-based care.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jason, you've done a great job sharing more about the ŌURA Ring. We're so excited to have you here. I want to give you the opportunity to end the conversation and share a little bit more about where your vision of healthcare is in the very near future. So the next 6 to 12 months, and this can be specific about the ŌURA ring or healthcare in general, really whatever you'd like to share with our audience.
Well, thanks again for having us. I'll just say, I think certainly one near-term area of excitement and interest for me is the continued expansion of ŌURA in primary care. So I mentioned like one example of that, but more and more primary care organizations are realizing the value of this data for their care protocols. So we're super excited about that. And then I'd say slightly longer term, I'm really excited about the idea that a lot of these condition or disease management programs in the areas we've discussed there's an opportunity to build those programs around the new data that's being generated, as opposed to wearable devices like ŌURA and others being bolted on to existing programs. I think there's really interesting possibilities there, and I'm really excited about that in the midterm.
Okay, so the future is all about data, something that we've heard before and that we're covering in all the research work that we do here at Parks Associates. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing your valuable time and insights, and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thanks again.
Okay, and if you hold on with us, we will be right back for our next panel discussion, talking more about health in home, modern lifestyles. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks, Elizabeth, for that wonderful discussion. Next, we have our panel discussion on the topic of health and home. Joining me today are Dan Josebachvili, founder and CEO of Silvertree, Abby Katz, Lifecycle Marketing Manager at 8 Sleep, Antoine Robiliard, VP of Health Solutions at Withings, and Farman Syed, VP of Product at Tonal. Dan, thank you so very much for joining us today. Can you take maybe a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and about Silvertree?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Kristen. Hi, everyone. Dan Josebachvili, founder and CEO of Silvertree. Silvertree is a safety wearable and remote care platform for older adults and their families. So most of us probably remember those commercials from the 90s of the woman lying on the bathroom floor, asking for help getting up. We've taken a new approach at that category of product with a safety device that really sort of blends the line between safety, wellness, and style. And so we designed Silvertree specifically for older adults who are looking to age in place, who are really in market for something around safety, around wellness, but are not willing to sacrifice or give up a sense of self, a sense of identity. They're not installing cameras in their home. They are not ready to wear the big red button around their neck. And so our wearable is intended to be simple, discreet, that has all the sort of features one would expect and want in a safety product without any of the extra baggage. So we've been in market now for a little over a year and a half, and our primary go-to-market has been direct to consumer.
Yeah, so very excited to kind of learn more about this as well. Thank you so very much again, Dan, for joining us. Right. Next, we have Abby Katz, Lifestyle Marketing Manager at 8 Sleep. Abby, can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and about your company?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I'm Abby Katz, and I'm the Lifecycle Marketing Manager at 8 Sleep, really where I'm overseeing our end-to-end lifecycle marketing program from acquisition and growth all the way through post-purchase and retention. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with 8 Sleep, we are a health and wellness company focused on sleep fitness. So we're building technology products to help people sleep better because, as Jason mentioned in his keynote, we believe that if you sleep better, you'll live better, you'll perform better, you're going to be happier, you'll live longer, all of those great things. So what we sell and what we're best known for is the pod, which you can see here on the screen. And the pod is a product that you install onto any mattress, and it helps you sleep better through temperature regulation. And then our most recent product, which we launched back in May, also allows for the management of your sleep position and mitigation of snoring through the adjustable base. So as you can see here, the different components of the pod, what essentially we're doing is we're putting different sensors on your bed through this cover that you can add to any bed. And it basically builds a blueprint of who you are as a sleeper and what you need to sleep better in terms of the two variables, temperature regulation and position. And then we're taking actions in real time to make sure we give you that environment that you need to sleep better. And we're really in this journey, not just to become a company that helps you sleep better, but a company that's turning your bed into a preventative health device, thanks to all the information we're collecting and seeing about you every single night. So excited to dive into some of those topics today.
Yes, and very happy to learn more. And I think I actually need one of those myself. I always overheat. But yes, thanks so much, Abby. Next, we have Antoine Robiliard, a VP of Health Solutions at Withings. Antoine, can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and about Withings?
Yes, Kristen, hi. Thank you for having me today. So my name is Antoine Robiliard. I lead the Withings Health Solution Division, which is Withings division dedicated to the healthcare industry. So to tell you more maybe about Withings, we're a connected health company. We've been around for 16 years now. We invented the smart scale back in 2009. And since then, we've developed an ecosystem of devices to help people take care of themselves. We're available around the world. You can find us online, in retail stores, in the Apple stores. And as of today, we've had millions of people take care of their health. What's really unique about us is our ability to find our way into the daily routine of users, and specifically for a long time. The proof of that is that we have 60% of the scales that we sold 8 years ago that are still being used today, which is kind of unseen in the industry. So strong with that, 5 years ago, we've created the Health Solution Division to extend this expertise in user engagement to the healthcare industry and help care team better care for their patients remotely. We work with chronic condition management, chronic condition prevention, remote patient monitoring, hospitals, doctor clinics, research, pharma, pretty much anybody that needs to retrieve data from the daily life of their patients.
Yes, very, very interesting and very impressive stats there. Just having kind of devices just remain actively used after so long.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
We're very happy to have you here with us today and certainly looking forward to hearing more. Okay. And next we have Farman Syed, a VP of Product at Tonal. Farman, very happy to have you here. Looking forward to hearing more about Tonal, kind of more about where you see this industry.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Kristen. Yeah, so really excited to speak a little bit about this. At Tonal, we build the world's most intelligent strength training system. And really what it offers is an entire gym of equipment with personal training that fits right inside your home. The real first innovation over the last 8 years, the first innovation was this idea of adaptive digital weights that can control resistance and adapt in the user's abilities in real time. So that gave us a lot of information and a lot of experiential delight that we were able to offer customers that previously they weren't able to do by going to the gym by using free weights. And really it's about versatility. The adjustable arms of Tonal offer hundreds of different moves and workouts, everything you can do in a standard gym and more, and it'll replace over a dozen machines. And with all the sensors that we have, we can offer a ton of incredible form feedback, as well as understand how customers are progressing towards their goals and help them achieve those goals more efficiently and more quickly. And through it all, over the last 8 or so years, we've achieved the world's largest strength training data set, over 200 billion pounds of data, pounds lifted, and data on over 4 billion reps, which allows us to get even more personalized with AI-powered workouts and offer people things at a very granular, personalized level that give them incredible achievements and outcomes. So very excited about this forum and excited to see where we can take this next.
Yes, very much so. And I think a lot of data, as you said, we've certainly seen the demand for this more personalized kind of fitness advice, fitness coaching, and workouts in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what we see is people becoming more attuned to wanting to achieve their goals where they are and how they want to achieve them. And so it's a lot of that's coming into the home. And so I think that offers a lot of different opportunity that previously didn't exist.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so very much for joining us, everyone. And very much looking forward to really diving into this subject. So we've seen, I think, a lot of growth and evolution over the last few years, and certainly something that we would like to kind of dig into. To kind of kick things off, and maybe Abby, let's start with you. So when we think about this evolution of home and health technologies, what use cases are you seeing emerging in this consumer space? Kind of where are we now?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest use cases, both inside and outside of the home, is this notion of preventative wellness, right? We're seeing the advancement of wearable tech, which has really enabled just this continuous health tracking that was once limited to clinical settings. We heard about it with ŌURA, and we're seeing this done in the home. And I think it's this advancement and commercialization really of wearable technology that's made it so much easier and more accessible for individuals to take ownership over their health. And I think, one of the biggest components of this is we're used to, when you're going to a doctor, getting routine vitals or blood work, you're getting a snapshot in time. And unless you're going to the doctor every single day, multiple times a day, you're not seeing how those numbers change daily or more importantly, in response to certain behaviors. And now what we're seeing is we're actually able to wear devices that help to trend that, or use devices that help to trend that data over time. And we're starting to catch things before they become problematic. And at 8 Sleep, as I mentioned, one of our long-term visions is to turn your bed into a preventative health tool. And we're already taking steps to improve your sleep, but really what we're looking to do is aim to use the bed to diagnose health issues. And when you think about it, we're already spending, 7 to 9 hours, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, in bed being stationary. And so it's a great time to track your health data. And the large surface area of the bed allows us to add many more sensors compared to other wearable devices. And so we are able to expand the types of data we're collecting. To go back to your original question, I think like most of this health-related tech in the home is still incredibly siloed. We're seeing the advancement of these devices, whether it's for sleep, whether it's for air filtration systems, whatever it is, they're still operating super independently. And I think the next phase is really about creating these integrated ecosystems where the technologies are communicating with one another.
Yes, and I think, of course, there's a lot of challenges, a lot of moving parts to that, but the potential there is absolutely enormous. And then Dan, I can see you nodding. Any kind of thoughts you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, I think Abby nailed it, right? The idea of today, all of these connected home products or wearable devices, they're all really siloed. And so creating an ecosystem where, regardless of where you are in your life stage, what you're looking for, what you need, all of these discrete sensors and products are talking to each other to give you, the end user, a much more cohesive view of your own wellness, your own health, your own well-being. And I think that's, to me, one of the most interesting sort of dynamic shifts we're seeing with the emergence and commercialization of more wearable tech. It's the data and the insights are now in the hands of the user. Whereas if I go to the doctor and they take blood or they run tests, it's their data, right? And at the end of the day, they're the ones who are presenting it to me. They're the ones who are explaining it to me. We're changing that now. And I think there's something really interesting and compelling about what that is going to enable us to do as individuals, to take more agency, more control over our health, over our wellness, and I think be able to sort of craft a lifestyle routine around our own goals based on our own data.
Yes, I think absolutely. And the medical industry has tried, I think, to roll out some of these patient medical records. They've tried to have medical records kind of follow patients around. Those initiatives, by and large, haven't been all that successful. Really, nobody knows how they work or can access their records regardless, which is unfortunate. But I think a lot of potential kind of with the devices and the apps that you yourself have.
Agreed.
Yes, and then Antoine, at Withings, you do a lot of work kind of with care providers and kind of with consumers as well. So really bridging these two worlds. Kind of where do you see this market around kind of health at home and in use cases? Kind of where do you think we are now? Where do you think we're going?
Well, for me, I mean, I fully agree with what was said before. We're seeing an evolution from a reactive healthcare system where you seek care when you're sick, and we're moving towards a let's keep you healthy kind of healthcare system. So that's very interesting. I don't know if it's emerging, because it's been emerging for a few years already, but I mean, in healthcare, everything takes forever. So let's keep it emerging. The use cases for me, it's about early detection of chronic conditions. It's about so helping people to avoid develop chronic condition. It's about remote patient monitoring. Once you have been diagnosed with a chronic condition, how do we help you live through that journey? It's about aging in place as well. How do you stay healthy at home longer? So there's a variety of use cases. We see a shift between the consumer is taking care of himself towards the healthcare industry is helping the consumer taking care of himself at home with the data that the consumer generates. And for me, this is fascinating. I think we are in the transition already. This is the beginning. There's still some work to do to get to widespread adoption. But I think the future is very promising in that space.
Yes, and I think I agree. This space has been emerging for the past 15 years. It took a global pandemic to kind of kick a lot of these guys in the pants and get the ball rolling there. But we're in a much better spot now than we were before.
We are.
Yes, and Farman, also, I'm interested here to kind of see where you see this market going, where things are evolving. Of course, you're more on kind of the at-home fitness side of things. Fitness is absolutely critical for maintaining health and well-being, kind of physical well-being, mental well-being as well.
Yeah. I think that the common thread about what everybody here said was this sort of idea of customers having agency and taking control and ownership over their health outcomes. And when you think about fitness, ultimately people want outcomes, right? Whatever their goals might be, they pursue fitness to help achieve those. And so what we're seeing is this transformation in being able to achieve those outcomes where and how you want, especially into the home being sort of the main beneficiary of that. Previously, home fitness was basically mostly cardio, bikes, treadmills, et cetera. And we're seeing strength training really surge in popularity. And before COVID, previously only the most sort of committed strength trainees were putting these sorts of strength equipment into their homes because it was cost intensive and took up a lot of space, racks, free weights, et cetera. And now we're seeing all demographics, young to old, all levels beginning to advanced, buying tonals for their home. And so what we think that is an indicator of is this future fitness about meeting you where you are and being where you are when you want to achieve your outcomes. At home, it could extend out to when you're traveling, the gym, wherever that works for you. And while COVID was this sort of tailwind that really pulled forward a lot of the demand and increased this sort of idea of people taking agency over their fitness, we're really in the early days of this. And so I think, as we all talk here today, I think about this increasing interest around holistic health tools, things that tie together my fitness with my sleep, with my nutrition, with my stress, to give me a complete picture of how I'm doing and for me to be able to make good decisions off of that. And since we spend so much time in our homes, that's, kind of the critical point for us to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so something like potentially a single pane of glass, kind of a way of getting visibility into all this.
Yeah, visibility is a big part of it, but I think it's also about decision making, right? You can put a lot of data in front of a person. It doesn't mean that those will be insightful or actionable. So you really want to make sure that people feel that they can make a change or continue if they're doing something well, and they know the next thing to do. Of course, if they want to get the full advanced data, they can get that too. But I think the vast majority of consumers want to know that they're on the right track or what they can do very clearly to do that, and make sure that they feel competent and that they can actually make that change themselves and don't require all these experts to do it. And I think that's what a lot of these technologies enable.
Yes, kind of bringing that expertise right to you, right to your own home.
That's right.
Yeah, so something else that I would like to kind of dig into. So we've talked a little bit about the consumer market. We've talked a little bit about kind of the medical side of things. Happy, maybe you can kind of kick us off here as well. What do you see as kind of the primary market to go after in this health at home space? Is it business to consumer? Is it business to business? kind of B2B to C, working with medical payers, employee benefits programs?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think there's a lot of different benefits with different go-to-market routes, and I don't think any of them are wrong, but I would say the most important for us is just focus, right? So instead of getting lost in multiple channels, I think it's really important to obsessively focus about your primary one. And, of course, this is dependent upon where your audience is and where you can reach them. But, we're at 8 Sleep intentionally, and I would say obsessively, a B2C brand, right? So that sometimes means we will say no to other things. We choose to focus on the B2C model because it allows us to directly engage with our customers and understand their needs and really own that relationship so that we can optimize their full experience at every single touch point they have with us, whether that's pre-purchase, whether that's post-purchase, whether that's them, buying something else. We use the data that we have on our audience to make sure that we're maintaining and providing value in that relationship always. However, we have started exploring some B2B opportunities, specifically around strategic partnerships that allow us to expand into broader wellness programs to serve our goal of making advanced sleep tech more accessible for all. So just to speak to one that we recently launched a few months ago, we launched a new partnership with TrueMed, which basically allows our audience in the US to purchase the pod using their HSA or FSA dollars. So essentially purchasing it using pre-tax dollars, which allows them to save up to 40%. And our product isn't cheap, so that's huge for us. And we've gotten a ton of great feedback from the program. We've seen a ton of great results. So I think, thinking about expanding into strategic partnerships that still allow us to kind of serve our core market.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's kind of being very clever about it and making sure that you can still kind of meet your customers where they are and who they are, while kind of enabling some of these new funding mechanisms.
Exactly.
And then Antoine, I'm interested to hear. So Withings, you guys have kind of a variety of different markets that you serve. Where are you seeing kind of a lot of pickup and potential?
I mean, we've done it all the different business models that you can think of. For us, at the other end of our device is a person that wants to be in better health. Now, the business model means how do we kind of get access to them? And if we think of all of them, I agree with Abby, there is no one that is better than the other. They all have their pros and cons. We've done a lot of B2C, so direct to consumer. This is great. You have full control, better margin. But access can be a challenge. Cost of acquisition can be a challenge. We've done B2B, so where we sell to retailers that will resell to end users. Suddenly you have access, you're everywhere, you have reach, but you lose a little bit of control. And now we're focused, of course, we're keeping the first two, but we're also very, very focused on what we call B2B2P, so business to patient. And here we work with the healthcare industry where they distribute the device. So it's no longer about being able to buy the device for the end user, which means that we get rid of the restriction of who can afford the tech. It's more accessible. We get a higher reach. It has its challenges as well. The healthcare industry is a demanding one, but it's a different business model. For us, it's interesting. Among our partners, we also see all of this. So we see in the healthcare space people that started D2C that are now going the payer route, and vice versa. And everybody thinks that the grass is greener the other side. Trust me, it's not. They're all challenging, but you have to make sure that your product and your solution are tailored to these specific audiences and business models.
Yes, they are different markets, kind of with different requirements, and especially kind of on the kind of the healthcare side of things, they can be challenging in terms of regulations and what clinicians are looking for.
I mean, the regulation and the expectation are the same on the consumer side. So for us, it's pretty much the same. When you bring a medical device to market, whether you bring it to a consumer or a patient via a caregiver, you're going to have the same kind of level of expectation and quality on the device. So thankfully, we can leverage all that work that we've been doing for the first 10, 15 years of Withings towards this new market.
Yes, I think usability is very much critical.
That's the important part here.
Yes. So something else that I'd like to know, kind of, Dan, what are you seeing as right now the kind of consumer appetite for senior living solutions? Kind of what does that look like in kind of this evolving post-pandemic market?
Yeah, it's interesting, Kristen. So I'm quite enjoying hearing the sort of perspectives of Farman and Abby and Antoine, who are all servicing, in many respects, a slightly different demographic than we are. You know, our focus by and large is older adults, 75 plus, most of whom have suffered some trigger, some event, a fall, a diagnosis, a loss of a spouse, something that puts them in the mind state of saying, I now need something for my safety or for my wellness or for peace of mind or for my family to know that I'm okay. And so for us, it's kind of interesting, right? Because there's a huge demographic tailwind now. You know, we talk about it a lot. It's like the silver tsunami, right? Boomers are aging into this category in life, this stage, which, you know, I would say pre-pandemic, for many people, it was, okay, at some point, mom and dad will sort of graduate out of their house, maybe into a condo. Maybe after that, they'll go into a congregate care community, a senior living community, until at some point, the level of dependency sort of reaches some threshold where assisted living becomes almost a necessity. And I think what COVID did that was really interesting is it kind of reversed that trend, because early in COVID, you saw so many of the high mortality rates were coming from congregate care settings, the most vulnerable people, and there was really no interest or inertia post-COVID for people to go sort of back into these care settings. And so now what you're seeing is more and more of our older adults are choosing to age in place. I think the latest numbers are something like 90% of adults over the age of 70, if given the choice, would rather age in place, age in their home. Now, at the same time, you're also seeing dramatic growth in the independent living world. You know, I think we're at roughly 1 million beds today in the US. By the end of 2030, that number should be double that. So a lot of this is just keeping up with the demographic trend, keeping up with the consumer demand and interest. The reality is, for everyone, the right solution is going to look a little bit different. For some people, living in congregate care is the best way to age comfortably and with confidence and peace of mind. For others, it's not. And so whatever solutions we're sort of thinking about really need to understand the consumer. And Farman said something great, which is about meeting people where they are. And historically, I think tech has stopped thinking like that with older users. But I would argue you have to kind of lean in harder, because at a certain age, when your level of dependency needs change, you need more, and you need more flexibility. You need more agency in how care is provided for you. And so that's the trend that we're trying to navigate today, which is we know that our users are both aging in place and aging in care communities. So how do we design solutions that can meet them where they are in life and can provide the level of care and safety, and not ask them to sacrifice a sense of self or routine or a habit just to feel safe?
Yes, no, of course. Today's seniors are also not quite the same as the seniors of 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So much more technologically adept, but still maybe needing some tailored solutions.
Yeah, 100%.
And Farman, so we talked about this a little bit kind of with the previous question. So how the kind of the at-home fitness market has changed post-pandemic. Kind of where are you seeing maybe consumers' wants or demands change and evolve in terms maybe not just of what they're looking for solutions-wise, but data integration, I think you brought up as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that the home, there's two parts to it, and I'll touch upon what Dan said as well. I think there's the demographics that are changing, and so those sort of needs and the needs that may not have existed with previous generations are shifting. So specific to Dan's market, we have this kind of group of folks that we call active agers, and there's this kind of renaissance, or this idea, this like activity doesn't have to stop at a certain point. You can live a very fulfilling life based on your goals. Your goals may shift, but you can continue to utilize technologies and things like strength training to live your most fulfilling version of that life. So for somebody that Dan might work with, it might be the primary goal is being able to be active and pick up your grandkids, right? And being able to communicate to them that there are solutions for you that work for you in your lifestyle at home for you that can help you achieve that goal. It's kind of a big revolutionary moment for them. A lot of people in that populace feel that either I have to live with pain or this is my lot in life now, and I can't do X, Y, Z anymore because that's stuff that had to happen outside of the house. So all of those sort of mentalities are shifting. A lot of myths are being busted through some of the tech that these folks and what we're working on at Tonal. The other thing we're seeing is that customers start to believe that these technologies belong in their home the same way other objects that fit into their lifestyle and aesthetic belong in their home. We believe that Tonal is a very beautiful object and much the same as a well-designed audiovisual equipment or appliances. People want these objects in their home. And that actually isn't just an aesthetic thing. It actually changes how you use it. When you have this tactile response to an object and you want to touch it and pick it up and utilize it, you are probably going to be more likely to be consistent with it. So it won't feel like a piece of product that you want to hide away or not show when people come over to your house. So it's not just a functional piece of equipment. It actually fits into your lifestyle. And it's sort of part of this educational journey that it can help you live your best life regardless of where you are in that journey.
Yes, and lower friction as well, kind of with the guided exercises and workouts directly on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of that is, again, making you feel competent, making you feel like you can do it. And so our coaches do a really great job of bringing everyone along at all skill levels versus a piece of equipment that is kind of staring at you at the gym or other places where you feel intimidated or feel like I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, or there's other people looking at you. And so there's like this, kind of a bit of a pride factor that might fit in. So all of that does, it's just kind of an amazing moment when you see somebody experience and realize that this activity is for them and can help them live a better life.
Yes, I think especially seniors who, as you mentioned, strength training is absolutely essential for making sure that they are able to age safely and well and kind of have high quality of life.
Yeah. And they're not considered the most early adopter of technology too. So like when we said, we're in the early days, I'd imagine Dan has this challenge on a day-to-day basis. So you're selling to people who spend a lot of time making that decision and need maybe others involved in that decision-making process. So it's a slow burn. And so we see a huge opportunity.
And Kristen, if I could touch on something that Farman was saying, because I think it's so important and it doesn't get nearly enough credit, which is the power of design in these products. I mean, I'm familiar obviously with Tonal, with Withings. Antoine, I have a Withings scale upstairs. It's great. I love it.
Thank you.
Abby, now I need to get an 8 Sleep machine for my home. But these are all beautiful products, right? They are things that you are not hiding in the closet, that you are excited to look at, you're excited to touch and experience. And the power of like human focused design is something that, we're all sort of doing it, we're all living it, and yet we don't talk about it as much as we should. And I think Farman brought it up, and it's worth just double clicking on it. When you design something that is both beautiful and functional, you're not forcing someone to drop some pre-existing habit or routine. You're inviting them to experience something new that they want to experience. And that's always kind of one of the hardest things with adopting new tech is, how do I get this thing to fit into my lifestyle? Well, if it's something that's beautiful and I like to look at it and it's there and it's ever present, the friction's way lower and the barrier to entry and usage is way lower. And that was one of our core design theses with our category, which was make it something that somebody would choose to put on every morning versus the thing that they dread to do. And I assume that's how a lot of people felt about going to the gym before, the Tonals of the world came around with beautiful product.
I'm so glad to hear this and to hear how it has changed over the past 10 years. I fully align with this. The design is essential. Design, battery life, ease of use. This is how you find your way in daily routines. This is how you drive change. This is how you have an impact.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't the case 10 years ago. And seeing that people now realize that you can't just expect people to change their life to adopt whatever you're building. it's great to see that the industry is catching up with this need.
I also think it kind of paired with, sorry, I was going to just say one more thing, that I also think like these beautiful designs is what, in these human-centric focused designs, it's what's helpful for the adoption of maybe, you know, the first time usage, but it's also paired with the results, right? So it's like creating the repeatable behavior. So it's not just, as Farman said, sure, I think he was saying that it's not just showing them the raw data, right? It's actually showing them what the results mean and how to create that like repeatable behavior. So I think it's this combination that really creates a strong emotional connection to these products.
Yeah, I'll just add one last thing. I know we've been on this topic a bit, but I think that the key shift there is that this mentality that design isn't what it looks like, it's how it works. And ultimately, that's where this fitting into modern lifestyle, that's where it touches you. Because if it works in a way that is in sync and in harmony with how you work as a human, then you've got a hit product. Then you've got something that people really find emotionally resonant with them. And they can't always explain why. Why do I want to use this pair of headphones versus that? Oh, you know, you can talk to the tech specs, but it's because of the design. It's how it works, gave you those surprise and delight moments and gave you the outcomes that you're hoping for, and consistency. And so I think all the products on this panel are examples of that.
Yes, and actually, Abby, you also brought up kind of a good point here. So a lot of kind of what you were saying, Farman, with this kind of usability and making sure that these solutions kind of serve that good point. A lot of these are enabled by artificial intelligence, kind of different ways of pulling together this disparate data, visualizing that, making sure that it's very much meaningful for the end user. Kind of something that we've seen some rumblings of over the past few years have been among consumers, some uncertainty around the use of the term AI, especially kind of driven by generative AI. Kind of how do you guys see companies maybe navigating this in terms of kind of marketing materials, messaging to consumers?
Yeah, and I think, you know, what you said is spot on. I think really to reach what we've all been talking about, this next level of connected health, especially, you know, in home or outside of the home, AI is going to be crucial, whether it's generative AI, whether it's just AI in general, no pun intended. But I think, you know, there is a ton of consumer uncertainty, and I think navigating this requires a very thoughtful, ethical, and transparent approach. And I can speak to, you know, what we do at 8 Sleep, and we really believe that this starts with education, and we never want our AI or our technology to feel like a black box. We want our customers to know how we're using it and why. So we're always explaining how it works in a ton of different formats, whether it's, you know, a video, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a social post, whether it's a behind the scenes look. And so we're also explaining what data we're collecting, and then of course why, and then also connecting it to what benefit that unlocks to the consumer. So, you know, we're never just collecting data to collect data. We're always collecting the data with a goal of improving our customers' experiences to add value to their lives. So, you know, for instance, we're collecting, you know, hundreds of thousands of different data points on our customers every single night. It's literally getting refreshed every single minute. And we always try and tie that to the benefit that the end user is getting. So we're able to clinically validate that our pod provides up to 1 more hour of sleep per night. You know, users are getting up to 34% more improved sleep quality. We're reducing snoring by up to 45%. So it's really connecting kind of like what we're doing on the back end to what the benefit to the end user is. And then I think the other piece is security. And so it's, you know, we're always providing detailed information on how our data is encrypted, where it's stored, how it's used. And then of course, this includes regular audits of our AI systems. But I think the main point here is that we're always trying to provide meaningful value to the end user in whatever algorithms we're using or whatever data we're collecting.
Yeah, so kind of really bringing home that transparency, bringing home that value to the end users and to consumers. Right. And Dan, I see you nodding again.
I can't help it. Look, I agree, right? I think at the end of the day, transparency is going to be critical. And unfortunately, with something as supercharged as AI, all it takes is, one very public bad actor to kind of ruin the use of the technology for a lot of other good actors if they sort of don't do it the right way. We think a lot about, and again, this is unique to us with our consumer base. We talk a lot internally about, don't be creepy. Obviously, we know technology can do a lot and it can share a lot. And the best benefit we can provide to someone with the use of technology and AI in particular. So for us, we're using AI to improve our fall detection algorithm. If we tried to explain that to many of our users, best case, we would get blank stares. Worst case, we would get questions around, what else are you looking at? What else are you watching? What else are you seeing? And so it's kind of hard, right? Because pop culture has turned AI into this monolithic thing that controls the world. And the reality is it's a super powerful tool when used appropriately. And there's a lot of applications for it. And so being honest and upfront and transparent about how you're using data, where you're leveraging AI or machine learning or decision trees or whatever you're going to be utilizing is really important. And, making sure that you're bringing it back to who your audience is. So I'm sure that a lot of the stuff that, 8 Sleep or Tonal or Withings are sharing with their end user, if we tried to share with our end user, our phone lines would blow up. And so we have to be really thoughtful about the level of detail we are sharing back, because it can actually backfire. And I think that's just kind of a unique thing, which is every user is going to be a little different, and every sort of market segment is going to operate a little differently. And much like different go-to-market channels will require different insights, I think different consumers are looking for different things. And this is where, if I can make a plug for direct-to-consumer models making a ton of sense, it's one of the best ways to answer that question, right? You own that relationship. It is the quickest way to learn something, or hopefully a lot of things, about who your user is and what they're using your tech for.
Yes, you can kind of see the demand and response play out in real time. All right. Yes, and then kind of Farman as well. So your solution kind of really makes use of AI to kind of build these recommendation engines, kind of bring home kind of the personalized fitness routines. It sounds like that is something that you guys kind of are marketing and leveraging on, but it's being kind of embraced by end users.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Abby hit it right on the head, which is it's really about the value, right? I've been in this industry, and all of us have been in the industry long enough to see a lot of trends and hype cycles. And the one constant is really that any emerging technology needs to find its primary benefit, right? For customers consumers especially, to really take it up. And so how does it tangibly add value to their lives or solve some problem for them? And so I think, AI has a number of these values, actually probably more so than any technology in our lifetimes, specific to consumer pain points or problems that can be removed in a trustworthy way. It doesn't have to be all things to all people. It can be what you need for a specific task at a specific time. But it's really going to take a lot of time for these benefits to emerge, because the first step with a technology as powerful as this and with as many questions as this is establishing trust, that you can deliver customers solutions that really help them. And it takes a lot of time to establish trust. It's hard to win and easy to lose, as they say, and it's a very human emotion. So we need that. We think that over time, customers are going to trust AI-based solutions for things like fitness from companies that they believe are helping them solve problems and actually helping them achieve certain things. So in our case, as I mentioned earlier, Tonal has the world's largest strength training data set, over 200 billion pounds of weight lifted. So every set, every rep, every movement associated with that. So we think that helping customers achieve their fitness goals becomes a big data problem with the set, with AI models applied to it. So we can apply the models and determine what works in a specific situation in real time to a specific customer, and use those insights to give customers very personalized training, which is something they've never been able to achieve before. Even if you go to a personal trainer, they're writing in a logbook and there's a lot of guessing and checking and whatnot. So if we can do that in a private and trustworthy way to solve a very specific problem at a very specific time, we'll show very tangible benefits of AI in a way that somebody can express to their friends and neighbors, like, oh yeah, this AI really actually helps me do this thing. Yeah.
Yes, it's not some kind of scary black box.
Yeah, I mean, it is really all about trust in my mind, and there are very untrustworthy ways that we're seeing emerge. And so I think the key is going to be to avoid those in developing solutions and not rush to judgment about, having it as a buzzword, but more what is the specific implementation that we can do for our customers that deliver benefit that could never be done before.
Yes, I think absolutely. So we do have a couple of minutes with some questions from the audience. So actually this one is aimed at you, Antoine. So kind of asking about, somebody just scrolled away from it. This is a question about the kind of the use of data services and how those are kind of monetized when working with either enterprises or with medical providers.
It's the same question, the ŌURA question that we had in the panel before. So the way we work on the healthcare space, most of the time we sell our devices to these partners, to these providers, that will then distribute the devices to their patient. They retrieve the data through the API. The structure of the business model varies largely depending on who we're talking to, and the person from ŌURA made a very, very good point talking about value-based care. I think this is where it's gonna go, because this is where you prove a benefit and a value. So yeah, it's hard to give a definitive answer because it really depends on who we're working with. But I hope it helps a little bit understand where we're going.
Yes, I think it does kind of matter very, very much kind of who you're working with and kind of what they're using the data for. So yes, we have another question kind of in from the audience wanting, actually this is to everyone, asking about kind of where products are available globally, kind of mentioning where some of these technologies can really make an enormous difference kind of in global health outcomes. So of course, Antoine, I believe you're available in most markets.
Yeah, we are in about 40, 50 countries now, not with all our businesses and not with all our devices. And our biggest markets is the US actually, and then Europe. I think the challenges that we see in the US healthcare system and in the US overall population around chronic condition is what we are seeing as well globally, or what we will see globally. When you think of diabetes, when you think of pre-diabetes, that's almost an epidemic that is growing worldwide. So will it have an impact for people across the globe? Yes. How do we get to them? That's the next question. There are countries that are more complicated to get into than others. But I think we're going in the right direction, opening countries after countries and trying to figure out what's the best way to localize your approach in every single country.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I guess any thoughts from you guys as well?
Mine's pretty simple. We're only available in the U.S. today, in a large part because there's a lot of service infrastructure that goes along with emergency alert products. And so while aging populations and aging in place are trends that are definitely not unique to the United States, we started here because this is where we're based. It's also where this market has been most evolved. But without a doubt, if you look at other countries with advancing, aging populations, most countries, and I think France actually has some pretty remarkable stuff that is state sponsored. And so we see an opportunity for expansion here, but our focus today is on the US only.
Happy to talk about this online then, to tell you the French perspective.
And then I can just speak briefly to 8 Sleep. Right now we're available in the US, Canada, most countries in the EU, UK, and Australia. And I would say similarly, always kind of looking for other markets to expand to. I think for us, there's the added complexity of our device is really heavy and it's really expensive to ship. And so constantly kind of assessing market fit. But for now, those are the markets that we're in.
And then Farman, I guess I know you're certainly in the U.S. Other markets as well.
Yeah. No, just the U.S. for now, but similar challenges that Abby mentioned. Obviously, large device, and the other piece of it is our device needs to be mounted on the wall. So the types of homes matter. The types of walls and that are more common in that area matter, and certainly regulatory and other things like that. But always interested in other opportunities. So
it's funny you mentioned the type of wall. We're working on a urine analysis device, so something that goes into the toilet. And when we started working on it, of course, we didn't think that everybody had different toilets around the world. So hopefully, at the beginning of the development project, we realized that. But the first realization was kind of surprising. Like, wow, we have to think about how can we fit into the actual toilet around the globe that is different everywhere.
Yeah, you learn a lot by presupposing and moving into certain areas. A lot of, in the UK, for instance, a lot of brick walls, right? So they can't necessarily support a certain amount of weight or drill into. So it's a lot of interesting learnings.
Yes, and everywhere is very, very different. So I think we have time maybe for one additional question from the audience. This one, it's not aimed at anyone specifically, but asking if the healthcare market has slid backwards potentially post-pandemic in terms of maybe what clinicians or patients are looking for.
I strongly disagree with this statement. And yes, maybe there are some numbers that would say otherwise, but for me, the pandemic has accelerated something that had started before, which is this willingness for care teams and patients to be better connected and to understand what happens in the real life of patients. And we will never go back from that. It's only accelerating. This is the way to better care for patients. So for me, this is just the beginning.
I agree with that. And I think it's also being driven by the patient. I think we're taking our own health into our own hands. I mean, we've seen what a pandemic can do to the entire world. And I think more now than ever before, people are obsessed with their health, whether it's perfecting their sleep, whether it's perfecting their fitness. They're understanding that, maybe doing 60 minutes of intense cardio every single day isn't what's best for your body. Maybe, I know, Farman, you can probably speak to the different fitness benefits differently, but I think people are empowered coming out of the pandemic. And I think that's forcing the healthcare system to have to adapt.
Yeah.
Yes, they've seen how it can be. They don't necessarily want to go back to waiting an hour in an office and not knowing if they're actually going to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I can't speak much to the. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Farman.
I can't speak much to the healthcare system, but specific to the fitness trends, I think that where it ties in with healthcare is things like preventative medicine and a willingness to invest in more at-home solutions to prevent visits to the doctor, right? And all these things can tie in together, where you can have people who have stronger knees and stronger joints and better mobility, and potentially that affects what Dan does, because then now you can offer solutions for people who have more mobility and more opportunity out there, and then it ties into sleep. So all these things are very tied together, and I think that certainly there's no backsliding. People, once they're used to a solution that meets them where they are and improves their life and their fitness and wellness and makes their experience in the healthcare system better, whatever it is, whether it's better interfaces with doctors or less going to the doctor, they're not going to go back from that. They don't want to go back to the way it was after that. They're not losing out on benefits here. They're only gaining them.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I think if there's one area where I might sort of agree with the audience member who asked the question, it's not so much that the healthcare has fallen backwards. It's that we've all kind of gotten spoiled over the last 4, 5, 6 years of how quickly technology advances and how we've adapted it. And healthcare is always going to lag behind the sort of consumer technology adoption, in much the same way that laws and regulations will always lag behind. And so I think now, more than anything, what we're seeing is there's a brighter spotlight on the delta between the way we all had to live in a connected COVID world that was all remote versus now, okay, healthcare is like still, case in point, I had to fax something to a doctor's office the other day. I haven't seen a fax machine in probably 15 years. So I didn't know how to do it. And so I think there's like still elements of that in healthcare that will evolve, but healthcare just by its design, by nature, is not going to accelerate at the same pace as technology. And I think that might be where the friction exists for a lot of people. It's, what do you mean XYZ with my doctor? I could do that in 7 minutes online. And so I think, that has to shift, and it will, and there's going to be some pain points, but it is all moving in the right direction.
Yes, I think a lot of physicians, clinicians, they'll move when they're forced to, and patients are going to force them at some point. They already are.
But we already see a lot of in health system, with hospital, with doctors. We see there is a lot of willingness. There is a lot of motivation. Then how does it actually work can be the most challenging part. The integration. How do you make sure that you send data back to the EHR at the right place, and that you integrate yourself in the clinical workflow, that you don't mess things that they've spent years of building. But the motivation and the willingness, I think, is there. Is it driven by the patient? Probably, but not only. So for us, it's very exciting to see this. We have partners that do amazing things, remotely monitoring their patient at home with small teams. It's really impressive what's happening these days.
That's good to hear. So I know kind of there had been for a while a distrust with some types of technology among clinicians. A lot of it kind of spurred by electronic medical record systems, not necessarily doing the jobs they were supposed to. But it sounds like a lot of those challenges may have been resolved.
There is still some work, but it's getting better.
Good, great to hear. But yes, thank you so very much, everyone. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. So very happy to have you all here, and a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you all.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.